We're recording this episode in the somber aftermath of a terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir. 26 people were massacred by terrorists in Pahalgam. One of the biggest questions that has been raised has been about intelligence failure.
There's a very famous story which was done in newspaper about an Indian guy who was caught in Pakistan. So some agency would have sent him. He did everything. He learned the language, culture, custom, everything. And not even first visit there. But there during the checking, at some check post, he was wearing a kurta pajama and the kurta had made in Pathankot tag. Years of training down the drain for a simple small mistake, And he was then in jail for almost 10-12 years there. Rumorant is like people try to gauge the mood of gossip.
Okay.
कि आजकल rumor चल रहा है भारत अटैक करने वाला है पाकिस्तान पे. That's just a rumor actually. That's gossip. You can't associate. When internet came, I was specialized in this social engineering thing.
Yes.
That we had to talk a lot on chat, Yahoo chat, right? And infer turn data into intelligence. All agencies were doing it. ISI was doing in India, we were doing there. Whole of the world was doing it. You try and make sense of things. Say I'm talking to you and you say, I'm acting like a young pretty girl and you are talking to me and say, oh, very nice, all that. And then you say, I say, I really want to come and visit you, but I'm scared. Aapka ghar to, you must be living in some remote village and all. I say, no. I have a full-fledged road in front of my house. My government just built a new bridge. We are accessible. There, you have a point.
Wow.
You turn it into new. So this is pre-satellite imaging and Google Maps, where you say, okay, a new bridge built on this road. Whatever I'm speaking here is my personal opinions.
Yes.
Nobody should consider this as a official statement from either the Directorate of Military Intelligence or Indian Army or government. This is what Indian Army is known for. We barely brush off an input. Every day, millions of soldiers are walking out on just a hint of information. Some villager will come and say, I heard there are 5 guys, terrorists, who were in that jungle. Great, let's go. We'll have hundreds of soldiers marching around all directions. We don't brush off inputs.
Hello, this is another episode of In Our Defense. We're in season 3, and on the season, I've been getting people retired from the military, Army, Air Force, Navy. We began the season with Major Manik Jolly, a decorated veteran of the Indian Army, and he's back with us again. Welcome, Major Jolly. We're recording this episode in the somber aftermath of a terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir. 26 people were massacred by terrorists in Pahalgam, not in Pahalgam, near to Pahalgam, around 5 to 6 kilometers away, in a place known as the Baisaran Meadow. Where a group of terrorists basically rounded up a bunch of tourists and shot them at point-blank range. In the aftermath of this attack, we have seen various strands of discussion happening in the country, from what would be India's response, whether it's diplomatic to military, to what went wrong in the first place that allowed such an attack to happen, and quite expectedly, and perhaps rightfully so, one of the biggest questions that has been raised has been about intelligence failure. You see this term crop up very often whenever an attack of this magnitude happens. What I want to do on this episode, Major, is to, from you and from your experience, give not just our listeners and viewers, but also me, that insight into what this world of intelligence is all about. Because, I've been told this by various people who cover the world of defense quite often. It is only the attacks that sort of fall through the cracks are the ones that we hear about, and not the ones that are successfully stopped. In a year, you'll probably have hundreds of such threats being neutralized. You won't hear about them because that's the world of intelligence. You'll only end up hearing about the ones that kind of, succeed. Not that is any defense or that is any excuse for what happened in Pahalgam. But like I said, this episode, we will try to understand what this world is about, so that my listeners and my viewers can get a better and a fuller picture of when something does go wrong, how and why probably it went wrong.
Would you mind if I give a little disclaimer?
No, sure.
Whatever
Please.
I'm speaking here is my personal opinions.
Yes.
Nobody should consider this as a official statement from either the Directorate of Military Intelligence or Indian Army or government. We are just sharing personal views.
Yes.
And in no way I would like to comment on what the operations are
Of
going, the
course.
quality. I would like to start on this thing, the intelligence failure thing, why it is so commonly used whenever something goes wrong. I think it's a perfect alibi for everyone. Uh, let's divide any action into three parts, right? One is the information gathering about it. Second is the guys who operate on it, and third is the government that makes the policy, right? So the operational guys, let's say army, police, CRPF, all that, people who are operationalizing, also have a front where they can defend themselves, kind of, right? Why did this happen? They have spokesperson, all this. Second part is the government, which always has a lot of spokesperson, actually, right? Why this thing went wrong or what. The intelligence community is the only one which never comes ahead to, defend themselves. So it becomes a perfect alibi in that sense. And in another sense, the reason is that the intelligence community, and we say that it is MIIB, RAW, state police, CID, everybody who's working in Kashmir trying to generate intelligence on terrorist activities, they would send a lot of inputs every day. Nobody, there is a system in which information translates into intelligence. We'll get to that. But the point is, a lot of intelligence is shared on daily basis because there's so much going on.
Yes.
Right from what is, you get to know some Tanzim leader has moved from place A to B in Pakistan. That's a worthwhile input. You will share it. Two, I came to know that 2 terrorists have entered the nearby village or something. That's worthwhile information you would share. The onus is on the operational command or the operational leaders. What do they do with it? Our job is not execution. Our job is not going for operations. Our job is to turn all the information that we get and turn it into actionable intelligence as much as possible at whatever stage and share it with the decision makers. In that, what happened, the strength of intelligence community lies in the quality of its operators. I can give you 10 points, right? I can give 10 people 10 points. All 10 of them will come up with different analysis. So the quality of intelligence operators is what it matters. And in that, MI has done a fantastic job, right from, the wars we fought and in Punjab and in Kashmir, consistently giving very solid, actionable intelligence all the time. But in the end, our job actually finishes there. After that, it is the corps or brigade or division, whichever wants to take act on it, or even the unit level. So that is why, in a way, it becomes easier to say it's an intelligence failure, because somewhere in the labyrinth of all this intelligence that would have been generated in the last 6 months, something would have come up on these lines. That the build-up. Also, the thing is, it's very difficult to infer intelligence in a black and white scenario. You will never get an intelligence. It's, 1 in a billion chance, not even a million, that so-and-so people, a group of so-and-so are coming to attack here. This is what their plan.
Right.
So if you catch somebody or khud hi bata de, that's a different thing. But otherwise, you say a build-up is happening. They are likely to come inside. The target could be a group of civilian people. Now, that group of civilian people could be a bus stand, that could be a household, that could be a village, that could be a tourist spot like this, that could be bus convoy, like earlier civilian attacks on civilians, that we Amarnath Yad. So, the range in which information comes is always very vague. And again, I'll come back to so intelligence work is not very glamorous as it seems to be in movies and all. That's a pretty misrepresentation. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of reading, a lot of studying transcripts, a lot of paperwork, a lot of analysis, a lot of midnight oil, just going through whatever data you have again and again and again, connect it with how these people talk actually. When he spoke like this, that time, what did happen? Who's connected to whom? You have so much gaps in it. Tomorrow I come to know Dev has crossed LC, yeah? And he's planning something. It is a confirmed information. But I don't know anything ahead of that.
Right.
I don't know whether you're going to Sopore or you're going to Srinagar. I don't know who your friends are. I don't know what are you planning to do. So there is so much gap, and hence it is easy to label it as an intelligence failure. The community works in a very restrained mode as far as the input is coming. You have, this part they show right in movies or series and all that, or even books. You have sources, you have multiple channels of information coming in, but processing it is a challenge because of so much gaps and also the capabilities of the information gathering that we have. So like they say, they will send a small drone किसी के कमरे में in movies and all, सब सुन लिया. ऐसा नहीं होता. It's really complicated.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the part where you said about how this is almost like an alibi for everybody, because I get that, and that's actually exactly the reason I wanted to do this episode, especially with you, somebody who's worked in this field. Before we talk a bit more about your life in MI and what the day-to-day was like for you and stuff like that, I wanted to first understand from you why and how did you end up being in military intelligence. So tell us, from infantry, how did you end up being in military intelligence?
Okay, that's a question a lot of people have asked, including my family people. The thing is that I did my first tenure in Kupwara. And just to clarify, even the book Kupwara Codes is a mix of my experience in infantry as well as intelligence.
Right.
There's a lot of intelligence operations
Yes.
happening in that. And the second book is all about pure int operations. So, but after that, I went to ADC as a ADC to Dev Commander. It was around a year and a half there. And that's when I met a couple of intelligence officers who were operating there. I found their work very interesting. I found it, cognitively very challenging, right? So I thought I should give it a try. So you have to apply for it. There's a written test, there's an interview, and then there's a 2-year probation period.
Okay.
After that, they see if you have the right aptitude for it. Because there's a certain kind of mindset that you need to be in intelligence. You have to have a very analytical mind, which is able to process the information in a faster and more, bullet point format, if for lack of better word. Secondly, by nature, you will find, it might sound a little oxymoronic, me sitting here on a podcast and saying that. Int officers generally not looking for, int operators across the world are not the guys who are looking for limelight ever.
Yes.
Even if nobody calls me for podcast next 500 years, I won't live that long. Next 20 years, I'll be all right with it. But yes, I actually go to a lot of places for guest lectures or panel discussion, motivation. That's a professional part of it. But the fact that you will rarely find anybody talking about I did that. That's not that's not how we are. So whenever you ask anybody who's a genuine good int operator, he'll say, I did my job, what I had to. I think that's where we sum it up, most of us. But then, yes, you have some people who love the limelight. So this kind of, it's a personality thing. Working in int is not about qualifications. It's about what personality you are. Are you able to listen more, speak less? Are you able to get more information and give less? In any surroundings, how do you view a thing? Again, I'm saying I'll come back to, we can give the same situation to 10 different people. All 10 will come up with different outcomes. In that, you have to pick up the guy who's coming up with what you want. Is he able to analyze it right? Plus, you should have a lot of, as far as working with data is concerned, you should have patience and capability to do that. Because it's all data.
Yes.
Whether these are phone transcripts or call logs or you just studying map for days and days. So the seniors who evaluated me during my probation, obviously they were looking for, and that's how I cleared the probation. My first posting was in Pune, and that's how I got into MI. And I have loved my time there. For some domestic reasons, I had to leave army, but I absolutely love my time in MI. Army will be always my first love. So it was very learning and something that shaped me for my future life also. And I can't say everybody should join it because everybody won't be able to. But it's a great place to work for sure.
Yeah. It's very interesting the way you describe the sort of character you need to be an intelligence operative. And while you were saying, I kind of remembered this, recalled this moment from some movie. I cannot quite picture which one it was, but I think this was about, if I'm not wrong, a Jason Bourne movie, where the operative is getting some first-hand experience, where they are being taught that the moment you enter a room, you are supposed to look for these 10 ways you can sort of escape from that room as quickly as possible. Does that actually happen in training?
So the thing is, that's a movie. It has to be sensationalized. You have to come up with. So any movie that we make or any OTT series, whether it's Indian, whether it's Western, you have to create these guys into superheroes,
Yeah.
and you have to make these guys into something. They are like, they can get into a AC duct, and they can jump from here and climb from here. Yes, there are some operatives who especially would have done these kind of operations, but mostly you don't go to, I mean, there's rarely a situation where you have to enter a room and look for 10 places to escape, but your mind is very agile, that's for sure. Because especially when you're meeting people for information, people can be, you're meeting, you're, so a lot of work happens where you are not actually saying who you are. You work a little under the shades of cover. In that, you have to be very sharp. A small mistake can give you up.
Right.
There's a very famous story which was done in newspaper about a Indian guy who was caught in Pakistan. So some agency would have sent him. He did everything. He learned the language, culture, custom, everything. And it did not even first visit there. But there, during the checking at some check post, he was wearing a kurta pajama, and the kurta had made in Pathankot tag.
Oh.
Years of training down the drain for a simple small mistake, And he was then in jail for almost 10, 12 years there. And he narrated his story when he came back. So my point being that this was covered in newspaper. So I'm giving you open information, right? Which is available on media. My point being that mental agility is very critical. Rather than there rarely will be a chance in life where you have to jump around like a James Bond. But there'll be daily requirement would be to actually think, act, analyze, create. As I said, the ability of a good operator is to analyze a situation and not get a very unbiased approach is what we take when we analyze the data. Because if we find, this is your enemy, these are your friends, this is a gray zone, all that is okay. But when you're working, if you are shrouded by any kind of bias, you will come up with wrong data. Plus, we don't get into too much jingoism. That's a fact. That's what sets us very apart from regular soldiers, if I was to say. Because it is your job, it is your primary task to advise the commander what route he should take. We are advisors, intelligence officers are advisors as intelligence providers. This route is the best. This is the least resistance. Here are the enemy camps. Here the locals are supporters. Here's what terrorists are coming. All that means that you are very critical in decision making, and hence you cannot be biased. You cannot be jingoist. You cannot be over the top. You have to have a very stable approach to everything. Today, if you ask me, and a lot of people don't like when I say that at a lot of places, should we fight India? Should we fight Pakistan? Should we fight China? You'll never hear me saying, let's go, let's take them on something. It's just not in my nature and personality. I would say these are the risks.
Yes.
This is where we can go wrong. Hence, now you take the call whether we should do it or not. Because a war is a brutal business. It's very violent and it causes a lot of damage to everybody who's involved in it. And if you have stomach for it, then get into it. So it's our job to tell our commanders that focus is always on the worst case scenario. Best to apne aap ho jayega if it turns out right. Our job is to give the worst case scenario. This is what can go bad. These are our weak points. This is where we can be compromised or we can be exploited or leveraged. That's what it takes to actually become a good int staff officer.
Yeah.
When you are in field, when you are operating, that's mostly intelligence gathering or counterintelligence. That means either you are gathering the intelligence or stopping your intelligence going out. Both are equally important roles. So that's more or less the graph of it.
Yeah. It's, I think, just about cold hard facts basically.
Yeah.
This is what it is. This is I think your job as an intelligence officer would have been to present the real picture as far as possible to you, the best of your ability, and then it's for the decision makers to make a decision. Ki bhai, this is what it is. Ab aapko dekho kya karna. And in that, I'm guessing there is no space for emotions then to be involved. Right. So I wanted to also obviously dive into your time in military intelligence and sort of your experiences. Before we get to the actual aspect, and obviously only what you can tell us, because there will be several things you cannot tell us on this podcast. But I think there are a couple of hypotheticals I want to do with you of like sort of real world scenarios where that would, I think, help me and the viewers and our listeners sort of get a picture of what a day in the life of an actual intelligence officer is all about. Let's say you were in you were in MI right now, in the aftermath of the massacre that just happened in Pahalgam. What would have been the last 3-4 days like, or days for you? Would you have been like, no sleep at all, or the all day at office? I mean, you been told, "Yo, this has happened." What do you do next as a military
Yeah,
intelligence officer?
it definitely would be like that. That because even when something as catastrophic happens like that, right? It's all hands on deck. My point being that that is a time you actually, the most critical thing is to solve it.
Yeah.
Who did it? Why he did it? And where did they come from? How did this gap happen? That's also very important to
Yes.
investigate. How did they get here even? If they had support, who supported them? All these require a lot of investigations. So first thing is, you, like anybody would assume, I'm not giving some national secrets here, you activate all your sources. Ki, and the thing is, the sources also know ki phone aane wala hai. Everybody knows this is a high priority, this, like, red zone now. So there's a, let's say, for better understanding, you have 10 tasks. You would have a some marked with red dots, green, yellow, that priority wise, right? So everything else goes by. You just get focused. What it does is that in your team, if you have 10 people, 2 people are on one investigations, 2 are handling something else. You say, abhi thoda hold everything, right? Come back, get into the ops room. Let us all sit together and focus on this for till the time we get to the base of this. That happens. Then a lot of coordination happens actually. What happens in the intelligence community is the bane of this community, that people don't share inputs. You would know as anybody else. And this is not limited to India. This across the world.
Yes.
Agencies are very territorial about their information, sources, even operations. So till the time it matures and you actually successfully do it, people don't share it. Right? So they would give a random hint. Today I came to know, like, this would be great in conference happening. I would say, I know there's a guy called Dev who's driving very fast. He's like, this is nothing, right? So that kind of thing, right? So people don't share good information, but it's how it is. There is no answer to that. But that is the time people let go of this.
Yeah.
They come to table and everybody actually shares a lot. We have this. What do you have? We have this. And somehow dots tend to join. Because at the end, the everything goes to Pakistan.
Yeah.
And there are different channels coming. And now everything is coming to Pahalgam. So let's say it's a kind of a situation where a lot of lines diverged and then they concentrated again on Pahalgam. A lot of people would have info on a lot of these lines. If you start connecting them, though, a shape starts to emerge. Right? Then you figure out, then the best thing that you do is you ask who has the best, who's most well positioned in that zone where, the ground zero, kiska hold wahan pe hai. Let's say it is in Jammu, for example. So the MI would say, yeah, we know a lot of guys there. Because let's say if it is in somewhere in Delhi, so IB would say, we know a lot of people. So that kind of, then they take the lead on it. Right? Then they start investigating. On the ops room, those inputs are shared. This is more or less how they show in movies and all. It's pretty normal, common sense kind of input. Then you start collating whatever so you have input coming in from all sources, but you have your base information with you. You start creating a picture at your own end. And that again, it's a repetitive process. You keep improving on what you have to arrive at analysis. And I'll again go back. Information does not matter. Intelligence is the first step. Intelligence is, let's say, a smart analysis of information that you have, right? What matters is actionable intelligence, most importantly, and that comes from a lot of analysis. So the day-to-day job is actually turning data into actionable intelligence. In this case also, the moment a new input comes and it changes the way you're looking at operation or trying to do the investigation, you immediately submit it. So that the other guy who's working on it also has a new data point which he can include in his analysis. So that's how it works mostly. It's a very high pressure work because everybody's asking you. Like after anything happens, you hear, right? The patrols were sent out,
Yeah.
armies, a lot of jungle bashes are happening, and people are all around the place looking. How do they know where to go actually? That's what Int guys tell. Right? Fine, you can say ki, if the operation has happened here, let's search the jungle around. But there's a very rare chance they'll be sitting in the same jungle, right? They do these terrorists do their operation and they'll keep sitting there. So it's kind of defeats the purpose. And hence for that, they go back to the end guys. Where should we start the search? What is the last input you have? Something is always there. You just have to sift through those thousands of data points and figure out, yeah, this is where I think, this is the one I remember something happened, or this is what I have. So even post action, when the operations start, then also you come back to the end guys and say, where do we start from? Where should we put our pressure on? Who are the people we should talk to? How do we reach from here to there? What is the path we should take? So that's how.
I want to now talk about what, in my mind, is the more difficult aspect of intelligence operations, and I think also the majority of it, because what you've talked about right now is more of investigating something that has happened after the fact, investigating something that has happened after an attack, which I would presume would be easier because you know the end point, you know. Pahalgam mein kuch hua. So now you have to go back and retrace what you missed earlier, where the gaps were earlier that led to this attack in this particular part of Jammu and Kashmir, which I think would be sort of easier compared to launching an operation from scratch, compared to finding something that you don't even know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So let's take one more hypothetical, the Balakot airstrike. Not hypothetical in the sense that it did not happen. It did happen. There was an operation, but hypothetical for our viewers and listeners, hypothetical for me, and for you to the point that you were not involved in the operation that took place. So Pulwama had happened. The government has tasked the various intelligence agencies to find potential attack spots in Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir, spots that where either of the three military arms can safely target and attack. How does an operation like that happen? What are the different aspects involved? Is it just, satellite imagery? Are there human sources involved? Is it just call records? What would have happened to find that spot on Jabba Top Hill and for that report to be sent to the higher ups? This is one of the locations that we think could be attacked, where X number of people, X number of terrorists, we believe are training, stuff like that.
Yeah. Great. So firstly, there are two aspects to this. Let's say if commander came to the MI directorate and said, we are planning this, the chief or the RM or some. This, especially because you mentioned Balakot, it has a lot of air intelligence involved in it. This is not a pure, gunfight kind of a situation. Hence, a line will be there. A line will be there where our inputs are handed over to air intelligence and they plan ahead, because airstrike, we don't know how they operate, right? Their dogfights, their LGBs, their range and all that. The part that the army would handle is, we more or less always have the MI directorate, which is manned by some of the sharpest people in the directorate. So the postings are, sometimes you're in field, sometimes you come back to army headquarters. So we maintain data, right? It's been like Pakistan is there for last so many decades. We also know inch by inch a lot of stuff. And as terrorists keep getting interrogated, killed, the information that comes from the documents or people we interrogate or people who spill our sources and all, so you more or less have an idea where these centers are, right? Training centers. What is critical piece of information is, if you want to launch this attack, right? So in 90s, when just a quick background, in 90s, when everything, Benazir Bhutto, she wanted to start these terrorist organizations, and her foreign minister, who was an ex-general, they started with Al-Qaeda and all that, and Taliban and all. They created a lot of training centers across the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, both sides, right? So that was open information kind of thing, because they used to behave like, so like you start schools, colleges, universities, they started this very organized training camps. It was a known thing, right? Those are like stage one, where people are getting trained. From there, they come to a stage two, where they camp and stay for some time before they are ready to be launched into India. This would be, let's say, uh, in more interior of Pakistan, right, where all these are staying under their leader, and he's training them everything, radicalizing them even more. All that these things happen, and then they come to launch pads, where you're just waiting when do you cross over. So it's like immediate notice kind of a thing, right? There can be many stages to this. It's not sacrosanct, but more or less these are the phases, right? So the data is available, but as I said, the critical input is you would want to cause maximum damage.
Yes.
Right. So where do you have maximum numbers available at what time? This is part of the army part of it that we can give them input. So you talk to your sources across, you talk to your sources this side, that we want to figure out when do you have maximum people moving towards launchpad at which center. That is what you're looking for. Plus they should be there for some time. That's very critical. I mean, because the aim is air raid. Now the Air Force guys might say, "Aaj, I don't know, they can have 10 reasons for not to do that, right?
Yes.
You could have hostile air space in Pakistan. They might be carrying out their exercise. The timing might not be right. So you can't actually, I personally can't tell what Air Force would reply. So you want to have a certain time frame
Window,
in
yeah.
which you can do it, and in that time frame those people should be there, whether it's a week, 10 days, 2 days, 3 days, kuch thoda dena padega samay. So that is what the pointers you're looking for. Once you get to know through all your sources possible, you share that with the Air Force and actually leave it to them. That's the job. And but another thing is, once that has happened, you do keep your sources active to know the quantum of damage,
Yes.
the impact. What did the leaders behind, what the tanzeems are saying, what do terrorist leaders are saying, how did it impact them, what is the government saying, what is the internal gossip. So all these things are very important. They're part of functioning on operation like this, like right from planning to the result as in review of the impact. You have to come back with that. We did this. This is what it has achieved. It is also part of your duty. And if it was, let's say, something totally from the scratch, let's say we are talking about some bases that we already know,
Right.
then you task, only the tasking differs. That in that area, what are we looking for? Then maybe the Air Force gives you a first priority that we want to target the area. Do you have something there?
Okay.
Hence, that is how it changes. It's just the tasking, but the sources and there is satellite imaging nowadays. It's like, it's a whole different world. Right? You can
Yes.
track everything and see everything. Back in the day when it was, so that was a little bit more challenging. Usse bhi pehle to people had to go physically and click
Click
cameras.
photos.
Usse pehle there used to be, when internet came, we did, so I was specialized in this social engineering thing,
Yes.
that we had to talk a lot on chat, Yahoo chat, right?
Oh.
and infer turn data into intelligence. A lot of all agencies were doing it. ISI was doing in India, we were doing there. Whole of the world was doing it. You try and make sense of things. Let's say I'm talking to you and you say, I'm acting like a young pretty girl, and you are talking to me and say, oh, very nice, all that. And then you say, I say, I really want to come and visit you, but I'm scared ki aapka ghar to, you must be living in some remote village and all. I say, no. I have a full-fledged road in front of my house. My government just built a new bridge. We are accessible. There, you have a point.
Wow.
You turn it into, and okay, new. So this is pre-satellite imaging and Google Maps, where you say, okay, a new bridge built on this road. That single piece of information is very critical for your entire military operations in that area. For armored troops to move, for infantry to plan, for artillery to break that bridge if they want to, or Air Force to break it. So this is how it was a very tedious, slow process. But within these things, you would always find a gem you could actually pick up and turn it into a good intelligence input. But now that all that is, it's not that it has gone away. The value of human intelligence will never go away,
Yes.
because it is worth its value in gold. However, this sat imaging, Google Map, it's a two-way thing, right? If we can see, they can also see. And in that, you are as exposed as they are. So now you have, not only you have to think like that it's not a happy situation actually. That at least from an int guy's perspective, I can tell you, we just hate exposure of any kind. So while we can celebrate that we can see more into the enemy space, but we just hate when we get also, because of the
Of
same
course.
technology. So you have to now start balancing it out somehow. So there is satellite int, there is electronic int, there's human int. आजकल मैं सुन रहा हूँ there's people use it on rumor int,
Oh,
room int.
wow.
That's
That's also,
that's really funny actually, because the thing is, how can you use two words in the same thing?
yeah.
If it's a rumor, it's a rumor, right? And if it's intelligence, it is. Intelligence is verified, solid, rock solid thing. Intelligence hai mere paas. The other thing is a rumor, right? So a rumor is kind of an oxymoronic thing. I don't know how many people like it, but personally I don't. So all these things get to. So just to rumor is like people try to gauge the mood of gossip.
Okay.
कि आजकल rumor चल रहा है भारत अटैक करने वाला है पाकिस्तान पे. That's just a rumor actually. That's gossip. You can't associate int word with it, right? So, but I don't know. It's a fancy corporate word. People keep coming up with terms, so they do that. But the solid thing is human, satellite, electronic, all these things. You depend a lot on them. The phones made a big change in it.
Yes.
The tower. So I mean, as you see, in every investigation nowadays, ki कॉल डेटा निकाल लो. जैसे क्राइम पेट्रोल में 1 सेकंड में सॉल्व कर देते हैं, ये टावर पे था, यही है. There's not even need to look further. But yes, we also, it's very, many years back, the triangulation method was actually used by Signal. So that was SIGINT, Signal Intelligence. So all these things help in creating a scenario, a picture, a perspective, something that the operational forces can work on. So all these inputs are sent to, coming back to the original question that you asked, all the field commanders would send all these inputs, whatever they can gather, whatever they had, whatever they can gather in that time frame, back to the MI directorate in Army headquarters. The officers there would turn that into a single picture, turn that into a crisp note, actually. This is the place you have to go. This is the time frame you have. These are the best timings, because if you don't give the time, all these terrorists could be out training or something, or you just gone for a bath or walk around the jungle or something like that. You have to have them there. So all these are the part of that information that you pass it on to Air Force or MOD, and they take on after that. The Air Force guys, the fly boys, whatever they want to do after that, they are cool. Yeah.
Right. And that, like you said, I think that what you just said right now, that I think is perhaps the most crucial aspect of the world of intelligence, the analysis part of it. And that's where I want to focus a bit. And also, like I said, talk a bit about your tenure in MI, the decade that you served when you were in the army, but after a quick break.
There was a University College London study, and this was based on over-the-counter genetic tests in the UK. They found almost 90% of them couldn't identify major diseases. What are your thoughts on these, doing these, and why are they so inaccurate in a way?
It's inaccurate for two reasons. That number one, we still do not know much of the genetics of these diseases, even though a lot of work has been done. As I mentioned, these are complex, common chronic diseases where lifestyle plays a critical role in the outcome. It's not just genetics, it's the interplay of both. And third is the most important reason, we have not found, you can call it as technical methodologies or statistical methodologies to accurately quantify the risk. It's a science still in the progress. And before that, if we try to use it for some serious situations, it's not ethical, it's not correct to do it. Yes, for fun, you want to know whether you can twist your tongue or you have a curly hair, that's a different situation.
Major, before the break, we've talked about, we spoke about a few hypotheticals. You told us about what a crisis situation in an agency like an MI would be when something like what happened in Pahalgam a couple of days ago happens. I want to sort of draw now from your experience of being in MI for a decade. And of course, you can't tell us specific missions that you were part of, specific things that you may or may not have done. But rather, what a day for you would look like. And from that, what I want to understand is what is operating in intelligence, specifically in Jammu and Kashmir, uh, actually like? When we went on the break, I said that I think apart from gathering the intelligence, analyzing it perhaps is one of the biggest and most challenging tasks. And the reason I kind of also relate with it is because in journalism as well, where I work on the desk. So for me, a primary job for people who work on the desk in any media house is you get bombarded with lots of information from your different sources. You have your own reporters, you have social media, you have other publications. So you have all this information with you, and you're supposed to sort of sift through it and find that headline. And now for us, it is that headline that will click. And when I say click, it is that will get us the most number of viewers, that will get us the most number of readers. I can sort of picture that with you as well when you were talking about what it's like in being intelligence, because I think that's sort of what you're doing as well, right? Sifting through information, finding that point that will click. For you, click means getting that pinpoint accurate information that would help you find that particular person that you're looking for. Just one example. So yeah, tell us what a day of typical day for you would be like when you were in a military intelligence, and yes, especially what is it like being in this field, especially in Jammu and Kashmir?
So you rightly differentiated. There's a peacetime soldiering, and then there's this field, right? A peacetime soldiering, you are very focused on your counterintelligence roles because you're not, there are no terrorists you're hunting around. So for the priority becomes that who's floating around to gather our information,
right?
Who's trying to take pictures, who's trying to send data. Now there's a last couple of decades there's been the cyber angle to it, right?
Yes.
So you have to scan with your resources available. You scan that also. You try and take. Obviously, you have friends with police or sources here and there. Somebody coming in who's suspicious and staying around Kent or doing something. You try and gather that. You meet with your team. You decide a day-to-day thing, like a morning briefing kind of a thing. Today we will do this. You will go there. We take a update on where are we on. It's like office job, right? So, but not that the stakes are any lesser because, but then everybody moves out. You do your thing, and but the summary has to be logged every day. That's the thing. Whatever you do, logging is the most important thing. So anybody who's averse to paperwork will not do good in intelligence.
Okay.
You have to write a lot. You have to read a lot, because I came to know I have a suspicion on you there, right? Today I came to know you live in X society. I came, okay, great. I came to know this input. I went and checked, did some surveillance. But then I realized you took a car and went to some other society. And then I somehow figured out, spoke here and there, that your actual house is there. That was your maybe in-laws house, right? So yes, that data has to go in that very day with what do I make out of it? That if this guy is giving impression of that he stays there actually, but what is the reason? What could be the possible reason? And then you list out. This is what I suspect him from. This is what he's showcasing, and this is what it could mean. So I'm going to follow these 4 aspects of his activities and figure out where he is moving most. Maybe take a month or 2 and you figure out, okay, he is actually a car thief, right? So that is why. So then once your path is a little accurate, then you start viewing that person or that suspect in that mode. And once you've reached a place where you've said, yes, this is what it is, then you prepare a case and submit to higher authorities. And that means the commander of the formation or the senior in your intelligence chain. And they decide what is to be done with that. So they come back to you, let's build it some more. Or they say, okay, good, this is a case we share with this agency or for this operation or with police or something like that. So that's what a day-to-day work looks like. It's all about gathering inputs, turning them into reports and writing your analysis, logging data. That's like any office, any regular office. But when you are in field, it means no office hours, right? Because you are dealing with, obviously you can't imagine office in terrorism, right?
Yeah.
Or office work or there you're spending a lot of time outside. A very critical differentiator between regular forces and int is we don't move around with a lot of people.
Right.
That's a big risk also, but that's a necessity. I can't, like, if a officer is moving from place A to B, they're generally a small convoy, or they move around with their QRT, the quick reaction team, or their subordinates and all that. At least 15, 20 people will always move in a team. Those are the requirements of field. Everybody knows that. But when 8 guys move out, they're actually mostly alone, totally alone, on a bike or a car, or with source, or two of you just hanging around here and there. It's a very high risk job that way. And we have had some really phenomenal legends in MI. It's very sad their operations will never come out, but genuine daredevils. I can't even begin to tell you the admiration I have for these people. There are a couple of these officers who've done fantastic operations. Like, actually, this is not, that's the thing. The social media, the Bollywood, the people who tend to write, they inflate the story so much for sensationalism. These are guys who've actually done that, right? And again, they'll never come and speak about the operations. So I have worked with them. I have learned from them. I've done operations with them, and it gives you a sense of, humbleness, that these are the legends of intelligence world, and how humble they are actually about everything. So that is what I was very lucky to work with these guys. They did great operations, and you tend to copy them. That I should also work like that. So in field, they would meet with the sources. If the source says that there is something which is on top of that mountain, right, you will go. Okay. There is never this is what Indian Army is known for. We barely brush off an input. Every day, millions of soldiers are walking out on just a hint of information. Some villager will come and say, I heard there are 5 guys, terrorists, who were in that jungle. Great, let's go. You'll have hundreds of soldiers marching around in all directions. We don't brush off inputs. So you find somebody there or not, it's a different thing. But I'm very glad that this camaraderie, or this coordination between the military intelligence and the operational forces exists in army, where generally nobody brushes off an input. They're always ready to do that operation, and hence it becomes moral responsibility of the MI guys also to actually work up to a level where that operation is successful. That's that it's a two-way kind of thing. So you spend a lot of time chasing around information, even if sometimes you're out for days, staying here, staying there. Actually, very high risk job that way, especially in field. You are just taking him on a face value. This is a source who said you can stay at this or that hotel. So keep working on that, and then you can come back again to your bread and butter, writing, report writing, analysis, and then you turn it into a report and share it with your bosses, and then they decide what is to be done.
Yeah. Can you tell us that analysis part of it? When you have so much information in front of you, is there a process through which you kind of, build that strand or build that thread that makes sort of a coherent narrative from all that is there in front of it? Or is it as simple as, like you just said, just reading, and then falling back on your training and your instinct and kind of, getting a narrative out of it?
It's a lot of gut feeling, actually.
Achha.
And experience trains you for it.
Okay.
So it's all about this. Both you and I could join MI. We could pass that probation. Our boss might feel, dono achhe ladke hain, bring them in, right? But the thing is, I could still be a huge failure, and you could actually be aware. And by failure, and means my analysis is bad, right? But your analysis is spot on, and that only comes from aptitude. You just cannot teach that.
Okay.
There is no training available for that. You have to have that mind. Either you are able to see through or you're not. I can tell you can send four guys to a shop, 4 different intelligence operators to a shop. And that shopkeeper is selling drugs underhand. Maybe none of them would be able to figure out by his behavior, talking. He will not expose to them that. But there will be one guy who will figure out he does that. He'll make a deal also. He will buy also. He'll get a proof also. And he'll come back with the operation. So that is very inbuilt. And that comes from having a knack, a faith in your gut feeling, a faith in your instincts. And lastly, I would again say absorption of information.
Mm.
If you talk a lot and you're not open to listening, you're not open to observation, you will miss out a lot.
Mm.
You have to be very sharp in understanding what he's saying, what does it mean. The CPU has to work very fast. If he's saying that, I gave the shopkeeper, भैया थोड़ा गांजा दे दो. नहीं sir, हम थोड़ी बेचते हैं. He would say that to everybody.
Of course.
Are you able to take it ahead?
Okay.
Are you able to take it to a conversation where he says, हाँ हाँ okay ठीक है 500 रुपए. Right? That's where the difference comes. We don't use force. We are. I mean, that's actually a. If you have to beat somebody to get information, you're not a great professional, to be honest. Because the thing is, when I'm beating you and break somebody's finger or kneecap, वो बोल देगा कुछ भी बोल देगा.
Touch नहीं बोलेगा.
The pain is enormous. Nobody can survive that pain. I mean, you can do it for a couple of hours maybe, but once it gets too extreme, nobody can survive. You will say something to save yourself. You will say, हाँ हाँ वहाँ पे वो है. He will know that it will take 3 days for these guys to go and at least till that time I'm out of pain. So the strength of a interrogator, which is also part MI's task, is to be sharp enough to have carry out good investigations and interrogations. And I don't believe too much in beating up. I mean, I don't know. There are stories which I've never been part of such things, but you have to be skilled actually. That skill comes from practice, and by practice you get experience, and you get a lot of experience by making bad decisions, good decisions. So figure out over a while that what is lacking in me. I thought these guys are like this, but it turned out they weren't. Where did I analyze it wrong? What part of this guy's personality did I pick up which made me think he's like that, but it didn't? So it's a continuous self-improvement also.
Right.
Everybody you're making, I'll give you a small, right, how to process information, and your listeners would actually use that in real life also. Whenever somebody tells you something, there are 2 parameters to judge that. Who is telling it and what is he telling? If Dave tomorrow tells me, last week when I was in Japan, I jumped from a satellite. You're like, what? The possibility in this is Dave could have been in Japan. The possibility that you took a skydive from satellite is impossible. Yeah. That's how fine, I'm speaking in extremes, but you get my point, right? Yeah. You downgrade the information, that this information cannot be trusted. Second, I meet somebody who I know for a fact that he has never traveled outside India. He says the same thing. So not only that source is untrustworthy, that information, so he's like downgraded to D4. He's like totally finished. So whenever you get inputs, you alphanumeric immediately code them in your mind. That this is A1, this is A3, this is B4, that helps you process the information in your mind faster. That helps you put pointers. These are the good points, I should work on them. So is tarah se you get used to it. And you are able to not store useless data in your mind. Usko haath ki haath delete karte jao, but focus on that one thing that he will say that will make your day. That is critical. You can be sitting with somebody for 5 hours. He will not tell you anything important. A third person listening might think it's very important. Dekho kitni kaam ki baatein bata raha hai. But no, what you are looking for might just be like a half of a sentence. And that is A1. So you converse for that. You hang around, a lot of work is just hanging around. It's a very boring job that way. You're sitting there just observing things, right? Because you're looking for when they say there is movement around, what does it actually imply actually? If you think of it, what does it mean there is movement around, that some people are moving around? How do you judge that? That means a lot of surveillance, hours and days, and shift after shift. You keep sitting and looking. Is there something that is worthwhile? So it's, as I said, slow, tedious, and sometimes gets boring because you're just sitting there doing nothing. So, but your mind is always on. You're looking for that little bit of observation or information or discussion that can help you turn that into something which you can present to the headquarters. That I think this is happening. You should have a look at it.
Yeah. Right. A slight tangent I thought of when you were just talking, when you're talking about being out in the field and how at times it could be very unsafe. How often was it that you had a sidearm with you when you went out in the field?
Always. Yeah, you can't be without it. That's the minimum you should be having.
But the reason I asked that is at times wouldn't that also be that could be a giveaway if someone sees you with the sidearm.
You don't carry it open. I mean, obviously, I won't get into details of how you go, but yes, you are very right in saying this is not like a policing job. This is not like even so. People tend to carry sidearms, and they would lift their shirt around it and show, "I'm carrying bhai log hain." We are not there. That's not our requirement. Right. We want to be as invisible as possible. Like the greatest place in a bar is to sit behind a pillar and look at everyone. That's the greatest place to sit and drink. It's like that. Right? You just don't want anybody looking at you. So to merge with the crowd, to achieve that invisibility, actually takes a lot of effort. I won't say a lot of, but it actually takes some thinking and effort. You are at a bus stand. You anyway look different from the locals, let's say. Physical appearance, right? How do you do that? That I merge in the crowd, but nobody looks at me because you look physically so different. So these are the things you work on. These are the things you would work on. How do I dress? Where do I sit? How do I behave? A small thing can give you away. A small thing will make everybody understand this guy is not from here. So those are the things you work on. Practice, learn. Every day improve your work. So it's an endless process.
Right, Major. I think we'll end the episode there. Thank you so much for being on this episode. Great chat with you, and honestly, lots to learn and lots to sort of unpack from what you've told us, told me, because this was the intent as well. I wanted to understand from you what that world of intelligence is all about, and you've given me lots to think about. By the way,
Great.
So thank you so much, Major.
Thanks to you.
It was great having you. And thanks as always to our listeners and viewers. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries with the passport. Bye-bye.